Hey there guys. This is a video that's been a little bit long in coming, but it's one that definitely needs to be made. This is going to be my retrospective into Star Ocean 3 till end of time, because I did beat that a little bit ago. About a week ago now, actually. So, it's, you know, I need to go into it, talk about my thoughts. It's a difficult game for me to talk about, because there's a lot of problems with it, but at the same time, there's a lot of not problems with it, you know? And normally, it's like, it's difficult for me because when I think back on it, a lot of the things that I focus on are the things I didn't like. And I have to keep saying, well, you know, I mean, I did really enjoy playing the game, but it's hard to, it's just like, everything it did well, it did mediocrely well. It's not like I can point to, it's like, oh, this was done, this was awesome. It's like 80% good, 20% bad, but the 20% is super obvious. The 80% is just, yeah, this was all done pretty well, but I can't, like, point to any individual awesome moments. You know, I know when I did my Zestiria review, I was, like, able to say, well, you know, I mean, the music was amazing, and then that, you know, scene on the battlefield was, you know, I was, like, talking about very specific examples. Whereas with Star Ocean, it's just generally handled pretty well. And I really liked it, but I can't really be like, oh yeah, and like this character's amazing, because there's a lot of little things that I feel like could be done better, and I don't want to make a video where I just continuously talk about, oh, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, because it makes it sound like I didn't like the game, and that's not true at all. So we kind of end up in a situation where I'm like, I'm making this video, but basically I wanted to say at the beginning that I don't take the tone of this video to mean I didn't like the game, because I did. It tried some different stuff. It was held together well, and it was just enjoyable to play through. The combat system was actually, once I figured out how the hell it worked, really interesting, and a very new take on action RPGs. I liked the combat system a lot. So, and I also do want to give a very quick shout out. I love the fact that your main character did not have to be in the party the whole freaking game. That's awesome. Granted, for a lot of action RPGs that's the case, but I still really like that. Because a lot of RPGs, it's not like that. You absolutely have to have the main character in the party the whole freaking time. And that's annoying. I don't like that. So, that said, though, there are some things that bother me about Star Ocean, and I always think it's better to talk about the things that could be done better than just to sit here and, like, fanboy about the things that are done well. But just to reiterate, do not take this to be a, you know, tear down of Star Ocean, or I don't buy this game, this is all wrong, because no, it's solid. So, number one, the characters were good but flat. At the end of the day, I don't really feel like that I understood or knew any of the characters. The ones that were most fleshed out were Fate and Maria, for obvious reasons. I do definitely feel like Sophia should have been fleshed out more, but she started off being your friend that you may or may not be close to. And then she shows back up towards the end of the game, but she doesn't really seem to participate as much, you know, because she's in the game such a short period, I didn't really feel like I knew her. And then there's other characters in the game that are awesome, but it's just like they're kind of flat personalities. It's like, Cliff was hilarious. I loved talking to Cliff. The Cliff's voice actor completely sold that character, and it was great. But, you know, at the end, it's like, well, Cliff is, you know, I mean, he wants to protect you, and he can't go back to his home for some reason. Yeah, I don't know why. You know, there's just, I don't get a huge sense of him as a person. He's got a nice personality, but the character has to be more than that. He wasn't really able to move me because I didn't really understand him all that well. Nell, same way, you know, Nell's very devoted to her kingdom, and she wants to make sure that, you know, her captain has an easy time of it. But that's pretty much it, you know. It's like she doesn't trust the people that keep trying to invade her. But it's, again, there's no the characters. There's no there. There's no. They are there to be members of your party, but the story is completely about Fate and Maria. And there's no real room for exploration. You know, Star Ocean 3 could have really done with the skit systems. The skits really serve as just, hey, these are things to let you know the characters a little bit better. I never felt like I knew that about the characters in Star Ocean 3. So, although I'm not going to say the characters were bad, in fact, you know, Nell is one of my favorite characters. Cliff is a fantastic character. Mirage, I really wish I knew more about. Mirage is just barely in the game, and she seemed really interesting, but since she unlocked so late, you just don't ever really end up using her, which is unfortunate. So, and then, I also, and granted, this is a complaint that really has more to do with the limitations of PlayStation 2. I don't really understand why Star Ocean 3 was about space. Because, realistically, like, 80% of that game is on Nell's home planet, and I don't know, was that Vanguard or was that Ellicor? I think it was Ellicor. Like 80% of the game is on Ellicor, and it's just like the beginning of the game sold me this great promise of this being this, you know, massive space game where you'll go around and you'll see different civilizations, and you'll, you know, it set up this premise that just was never fulfilled. And so there's a certain degree of regret that I have to have when I look back on it, because I'm just like, I was expecting this great, you know, game of diplomacy and, you know, different factions and different cultures and being able to see how life changes based on conditions, and what I end up getting is a handful of ships and then like 4 locations. You know, you've got Vanguard, you've got Ellicor, you've got the moon base, you've got Styx, and then you've got the, you know, real world, I guess. By the way, if you're watching this and you haven't played the game, I've kind of just spoiled a major plot point, I'm sorry, but I very, very, very specifically try to avoid spoilers if it's a game that just came out. But if it's a game that's been out for a while, I usually feel like people that watch this are pretty, either have played it or aren't intending to play it, so... But, sorry, I should have given a spoiler warning before I said that. And that's again, that's a limitation of PlayStation 2, but the structuring it the way they did, I just really feel like the game would have been stronger if it had been just about Ellicor. Because it basically was, and it's the extra stuff, there's just such a disconnect between Ellicor and the rest of the game that it felt abnormal. I remember when the game started, we had this massive war going on between, you know, humanity and the Vendini that I kind of expected to play a pivotal role in at some point. And then right as we're finishing off Ellicor, we find out that, oh yeah, the Vendini, the people that stole your father, you know, all this stuff, they just got wiped out. And which was both cool, but also just a complete shift, and, you know, when you telegraph, it can be a good thing to break a player's expectation. I'm not saying you should never surprise the player, but I am saying it's a weird decision to telegraph a certain overarching plot line and then just abruptly derail it with no indication that's coming. That said, though, the actual reveal and, you know, why the Vendini got destroyed is kind of cool, although also kind of odd. And that brings me to the big issue. There's 2 big issues I have with Star Ocean, and one of them is the way the reveal is handled. The reveal itself, and again, if you're still watching, I'm going to talk about the reveal very explicitly, because you kind of have to. You can't talk about Star Ocean without talking about the reveal. The idea of a computer program getting sophisticated enough to have meaningful choice and a degree of sentience and self-actualization that gets so sophisticated that the individuals within, the dynamic individuals within actually develop a soul and therefore become a living creature is a super interesting idea. It really begins to beg the question of what is a soul, and what is the difference between, you know, a human being and a digital entity if both of them have gotten to the point where they are considered alive and they feel pain and all of this. And granted, it has to be in the future because our current technology can't replicate that, but when it can, it does. It's a very scientific, essential scientific question, but still a very interesting one, and one that I enjoy quite a bit. So I thought that was handled really well. what I find a little bit more problematic about it is, one, we discovered it by going to the real world, but yet our magic powers still worked. I did talk about this in the game at one point, but I may be wrong about this, but from what I understand, the reason that our magic powers work is that the genetic manipulation that our dad was doing in order to cause, you know, a lot of our stuff to function really worked by going into our code and altering some values in order to grant us eventual actualization of powers that you know, we shouldn't naturally have. I believe that because whenever Fate awakens to his powers, you actually do see computer code in that scene, although I didn't really pick up on it at the time, because it's not unusual for mystical powers to, you know, involve some element of, you know, numbers and stuff and weird effects going on. But if that's the case, how the hell do these extra bits of computer code allow us to A, exist in the real world, and B, have magical powers that work in the real world? That is just really weird. And I feel like that could have been handled better. We could have, you know, realized we were in a simulation and gotten out and, you know, had, you know, gone out and ran into avatars and other, you know, you could have handled that in a way that still made it sense, but the way they handled it just really broke immersion for me, and I couldn't really accept that as realistic. The other big problem I have, and this is kind of the real point I want to make with this video, is that the ending went on too damn long. And that's an interesting state, because I said that as I was finishing the game, and there were a few people that took issue, because they're like, well, you know, I mean, the endings of games are always really long and overdrawn. How is this any different? And I thought about it, and let me explain to you why this is different. But in order to do that, let me compare that with the ending of another game. The game I always use to compare it with is Final Fantasy VII, because it is the most famous RPG game out there. I feel like it is the game that I can most easily talk about without the risk of spoiling others. You know, the end of Final Fantasy VII is, you know, Sephiroth's Wake, or, you know, the crater, the Northern Crater. And it's a very long dungeon. You go up there, and it takes probably 3 hours to get through the first time. The enemies are much harder than what you've run into before. The place is massive. There's not a save. They actually give you a thing to make a save point wherever you want to. And you can just set a save point, which was a cool thing to do. But it's just, it's this, you have to have this escalating series of battles leading up to the final boss. The reason that the, you know, crater does not feel bad and feels appropriate is, one, it is one event. You go to, you know, the Northern Crater, the airship lands, you go down, you fight your way down throughout the crater, and then eventually you do manage to, you know, get to the core of the crater where Sephiroth is, and you fight him. Prior to going to the Northern Crater, there's this big thing that says, okay, here we go, we've got to, you know, work together, we've got to fight Sephiroth. And then what is the status of you and Sephiroth prior to going to the Northern Crater? There's a big, massive shield on it. For seriously, like the last third or fourth of the game, there's this big shield. Your last fight with Sephiroth is at the end of, I think, Disc 2. Maybe 3. But, you know, there's this whole section with Shinra. You end up having to fight with the weapons. There's a lot that goes on between, you know, because the game starts with you chasing Sephiroth up until the point where, you know, Cloud is taken out of the party and the, you know, it falls into the live stream, and there's this big event. And why do I bring this up? Because that creates a very, very obvious separation in the game so that the end game starts at a very clear point. The reason I bring this up is that when does the end game start in Star Ocean 3? Pretty much when you leave the moon base. When you leave the moon base, you're like, okay, well, we found out about, you know, the creator and his executioners, and we need to go through the gate into the, you know, 4th dimension and, you know, try and, you know, take on the creator. And so, after you leave the moon base, you go to Styx. You fight your way through Styx. You go into 4D space, into the real world. go through it. You head to the Vortex Corporation. I've forgotten its actual name, but the corporation that maintains the world. You fight through it, you fight through the assassins, you get up to the creator's office. He's not there, so you hack in and you head back into the simulation. You go back to Elicor 3, you go through 2 dungeons you visited previously before you get into the firewall. You fight your way through the firewall, then you get to the end castle, you fight your way through it, and then you finally get to Luther. That's a lot of stuff. Alright, that's a whole lot of stuff. And that's kind of my point. That's why I feel like the end dragged on for so long. In most games, they make it really, really, really clear when you are going into the final dungeon. And, you know, Tales of Vesperia, good example. Tales of Vesperia, I'm not going to talk about it plot-related, because I don't like to have to talk about too many things, because I just end up with a lot of people who are like, oh, I can't listen to spoilers. But Tales of Vesperia's final dungeon is a very long dungeon. Again, it's probably 3 or 4 hours long in total. There's a lot of backtracking. But again, they tell you that is the last dungeon. The problem that I have with Star Ocean 3 is that thematically, the end theme of the game starts like 4, 5, 6, 10 hours before you actually get to the final boss, because the push on the end boss starts when you leave the moon base. And that's what if you're ever making a game, you know, you have to get people ready to actually beat the game. And so what you're doing right now should only shift to fighting the final boss when you get to a position to fight the final boss. One of the reasons that Mario has kind of a crap plot is because your goal from level 1-1 is to get to the princess and rescue her. And that's it. Now, thankfully, Mario is not a narrative-driven game, and so it's not really a problem that it is so bad. I shouldn't say bad, but that the narrative doesn't really go anywhere. But for a story-driven game, the fact that you're just trudging forward with the exact same goal for that many locations is frustrating. You know, when I left Starbase, I liked Styx, and I liked 4D Space, and I thought going to the corporation that maintained the world was fine. And when I got to Luther's office, that's where it kind of started to fall apart for me. I'm like, I'm not done yet, because the whole thing had been shaped up. You know, going through Styx, going through the portal, having the reveal about the real world, going through having to fight your way through the corporation in order to finally make your way up to the Luther's office, all felt appropriate. But then it just started dragging itself out, and that was frustrating. And just to put things into perspective, the Star Ocean 3 run is 52 parts long. I went to Styx in part 41. So that means the last 12 episodes were in the final push, or at least what was thematically the final push. You could very obviously argue and say that, the final push didn't really start until you beat the firewall. And you know what? That is an argument you can make, but at least from a narrative perspective, the final push on the creator started when we left the moon base. And that is why I think the end of the game felt so wrong and felt so long, is just because your goal of getting to Luther stretched so far. And so, again, like I say, most games, if you look at all the other RPGs you've played, they're usually pretty clear to say, okay, we are now pushing for the last boss. This is the end. They signal that pretty clearly. So, that is what I would say about that. That is I think the biggest kind of fall down that Star Ocean 3 has is just the way it handles the ending, and the ending very much overstays its welcome for me. But, that said, I know that I spent basically probably 15 of the 19 minutes complaining about stuff. Let me just revisit. There's a lot of things about Star Ocean 3 that is amazing. I know I absolutely, I know I absolutely focused on what was negative, but the battle system, like I said, was fantastic. I thought it was really well made. I thought it was super, super complex for where it was, because again, this game came out at about the same time as Tales of the Abyss, and it is so much more complicated than Tales of the Abyss. It's really well handled. It's varied, and you just feel more powerful, and there's a lot to explore with it. The combat system is excellent. The characterization, the voice actors do a fantastic job. They really sell the characters. I wish the plot did a better job of selling the characters, but I cannot complain about the voice actors. I really like this group. At the very least, I really like Cliff and Nell and Maria. Fate seemed a little flat to me, didn't really get to know Sophia, and of course, Pepita and Mirage just show up so late in the game. I mean, Mirage is there, but her, the scenes she's in are super, super, super rare, and that's a little bit sad. The, creation system, or the inventing system, is interesting, although a little bit overpowered with save scumming. It was funny, people were like, you should save scum. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. No. But yeah, it was a very enjoyable playthrough. It handled things at a decent pace. It felt like it wanted to be a Mass Effect-like game and just didn't have the resources, and they had to settle. Which is unfortunate, but I understand why it happened. So, final verdict, Star Ocean 3 is absolutely worth a playthrough. If you somehow watch this, I'm sorry for revealing the big spoiler, but I still very much recommend it. It is a really, really, really fantastic game. It has its flaws, and unfortunately, from what I've heard, this series doesn't really get better from here. But it is still a it's a really interesting game, and it goes into directions I wasn't necessarily expecting it to, and that's always welcome. I always really, really like games that aren't just the general fare. And oh my god, I just love space. I play so many games that are in fantasy and set on one world that the idea of a space RPG is amazing. It's why I love the Mass Effect series. It's why this game was a lot of fun. And I wish I had had more time, going around and seeing other stuff. It did certainly feel like, unfortunately, if I wasn't talking to a human, I was killing something. There was very, very little explanation of exploration of other cultures, and that was unfortunate. But the game was well handled. The way the plot was structured was sound, and I did really like, I liked the reaction of people when we got into 4D space. That was awesome, and the whole just general unknowns about what to handle and how to handle it. So, well done, my friend. Well done.